I'm so in love with you.
Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. Today's video is going to be absolutely bonkers. New home builders across the nation are starting to see a surge in canceled contracts. Now, this is particularly concerning to new home builders because as the interest rates continue to skyrocket like they are right now and will continue to, so will canceled contracts. We're going to continue to see a surge of canceled contracts, especially when it comes to new home builders. This is going to put new home builders particularly at risk of being shut down or possibly being bankrupt, just like what happened in 2008 and 2009. Now, in order to fully understand how many new builds are going on, potentially how bad the scenario is, we're going to take a look and we're going to talk about some data and economic factors in 2022 to see what is probably going to start taking place as we move on throughout this year. Now, it's really important to understand this, you guys. I am not saying at all that I think new home builders should go out of business. In fact, I would argue that we actually really need new home builders because that's the primary source of new homes and new inventory coming to our market. But what I am saying is they are very much at danger, and so are consumers from buying a new home build. Now, before we continue, please understand, you guys, I am just a YouTuber. I am not a financial advisor. This is just my opinion. Even though I am a realtor in Houston and loan officer in Texas, I'm just sharing with you guys my thoughts. If you guys can, please do me a favor for the YouTube algorithm. Like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, comment. I absolutely love y'all's intel and experiences. Now, I want to talk about 5 things today. Number 1, I want to talk about how much new building is actually going on, not necessarily just the permits, but actual active building. Number 2, we're going to talk about how easy is it for a buyer to cancel out of a contract. Number 3, how much danger and what type of danger are new home builders in? Number 4, what type of danger are consumers in that are purchasing these new homes? And number 5, will it lead to price drops and more inventory? And if so, when will that happen? Now, number 1, how much active new building is going on right now. Now, I'm getting this data, y'all, from the U.S. Census Bureau. So if you want to reference any of this data, just go to the U.S. Census Bureau. Now, according to them, as of February 28th of 2022, active construction is at 770,000 units. So new home builders are almost building at a record paces right now. There's a ton of new building going on. In fact, 772,000 homes are currently being built, which is a ton, right? Here's the thing, you guys. The question is now, how many of those new home buildings are already under contract, and how many of those new home builds are spec homes? And it's really important to note this, and we'll cover this on number 3, the dangers to new home builders, but new home builders are not set up to hold on to spec homes. New home builders must get rid of their inventory as quickly as possible. So it's important to understand that as of right now, out of that 772,000, 500,000 of those are currently under contract. Here's the thing, that leaves 272,000 homes across the nation that are being built without buyers, again, which is called a spec home. So a spec home is a home that's being built that is not yet under contract. So 500,000 with contract, 272,000 without a contract. So that's essentially 35% of those 772,000 homes being built. 35% are being built as a spec home. So any additional contract cancellations is going to put a ton more inventory into the hands of the new home builders, which again is very dangerous for them. Now, to put things in perspective as far as how many homes are being actively built right now, it is over 40% of the long-term national average. So construction is at a 40% high right now. Again, I think it's very important to look at that because a lot of what is going on right now, in my opinion, is based on emotion and COVID lockdowns. This is not the same market as 2008. The 2008 housing bubble took essentially 6 years for it to be created. The one that we have right now, 2 years at best. So I believe it's going to be a very damaging crash, but it's not going to last as long. But it's very interesting to see exactly how many new home builds are actually being worked on and how much above the national average that is, being 40%. So 40% surge in new home builds being built actively right now. Now, number 2, how does a buyer even cancel a contract? So here's the interesting thing, you guys. A buyer can actually cancel a contract fairly easy when it comes to a new home build. Now, generally, it's much easier to cancel a contract on a new build over a resale home. Couple of the reasons why, and listen to this, you guys. Typically, the earnest money deposit is only $500, right? It's only $500 generally in my area of Houston. Houston's number 2 city across the nation for new home builds. So I have a very big sight and experience of what is going on right now with new home builds because of the city and area that I live in, right? But generally a buyer in my area is going to put $500 down to lock that property up, which in turn gives the builder the incentive to start building. But as you guys know, $500 to lock in a $400,000 house, that doesn't really make sense. So people are walking away and just losing their earnest money of only $500. Now, across the nation, that differs. I've heard of new home builds in Southern California where they require thousands of dollars, but I'm saying in my local market, it's very cheap to just walk away from the builder if you don't like where the economy is headed or you don't like where the housing market's headed. But not only that, in a lot of these contracts, you guys, a buyer can cancel a new home build without penalty if their financing doesn't go through. And the problem is right now, 3 months ago, rates may have been 3%. Fast forward to today, the national average, according to Fred, is 5.3, right? That is a massive increase in mortgage payment, not to mention assessed value and insurance and flood insurance and things of that nature. So a lot of these people may not even be able to get to be financed by the time the home is done being built, right? So in other words, there's, a lot of these buyers, not all of them, but a lot of these buyers, it's actually kind of easy per se and comparatively cheap to just walk away if you don't want to purchase a house anymore, right? So it's very, very easy, which creates an additional problem for the new home builders because they're technically not as protected generally with someone that goes under contract on a resale home, because generally on a resale home, what I see, 1% earnest money. So if the home is $400,000, normally the earnest money is $4,000, not $500 like a lot of people can get away with when purchasing a new build. Now, number 3, what are the dangers exactly for the new home builders? Now, here's the thing, you guys. As I've said, new home builders are not set up to hold on to inventory and to hold on to a lot of spec homes. The reason that is, a lot of these new home builders are borrowing money to start the building based on short-term loans. So in essence, the moment the building starts going on, they have a ticking clock that is essentially winding down before they get hit with fees and penalties and interest payments and things of that nature. So if they don't sell a lot of time within that time frame, their expense to hold the house goes up sharply. So essentially, you guys, it's a vicious balance when it comes to supply and demand from new home builders. Now, let's look at what happened last time. So back in 08 and 09, new home builders took an absolute beating because they overbuilt. So when they overbuilt back in 08, back in 09, and all of the demand dried up, essentially no one could purchase homes anymore. So they were stuck with the inventory, and they essentially dumped their inventory at fire sale prices just to stay in business. And they are greatly at danger from that happening right now. But not only that, what we have differently than 2008 is massive out of control inflation and supply chain issues. So I really want to see their profit sheets just to see if they can even go down on their new home builds, or if they are forced to sell them at the elevated rate. And this is essentially what I'm saying, you guys. New home builds right now, as far as in my area, from what I could tell, are 20% above market value when compared to normal resale houses. So there's all of these compounding things that are putting more and more pressure on new home builders, despite the fact that we don't have a lot of inventory. We have historically low inventory. But again, when people can't buy, inventory goes up, right? So rates lead sales and construction. Sales and construction leads price. Price leads inventory. So now that we've had interest rates kind of lead the way, surging, skyrocketing, the next thing that we're going to see a damper on is sales and construction. When sales goes down and construction sales down, that's when we start seeing drops in prices. When we start seeing drops in prices, that's when we start seeing increase of inventory. So we're kind of on that second and third stage right now, right? Now that the interest rates have gone up. But very dangerous for new home builders to overbuild in the back of all of their mind that are not greedy and not emotional, which are most new home builders are very intelligent. They don't want to overbuild because they don't want to go out of business. But we're going to start seeing that as we go into 2022. Now let's talk about the dangers to consumers or the dangers to buyers that are going to be purchasing new home builds right now. Now, the number one thing, you guys, in my local market, so I'm analyzing Houston, again, massive construction going around all over the place. What I have noticed is as on average, these new home builds are 20% above market value when compared to resale homes. So the immediate danger for anyone that's purchasing a new home right now is you're already starting 10, 15, 20% upside down in that house, because the moment that you move into it, guess what? It's no longer a new build, right? So essentially, if the equity stops going up or even goes into negative territory, all of those people that bought new home builds, it's going to take a lot longer for them to rebuild their equity. And a lot of them are going to start home ownership chained to their house with an inability to sell. So they're already overpriced. Now, they say they're overpriced because inflation, supply chain issues, and things of that nature. But nevertheless, they are overpriced. And that's number one. Now, here's the other thing. Property tax, which you guys need to understand, and this is why so many people are going to start canceling contracts. Look at property taxes. The problem with new home builds is generally, well, first of all, understand this. Over 90% of people purchasing new home builds are getting a mortgage. Over 90% of the people purchasing new home builds are getting a mortgage. Here's the dangerous thing when it comes to mortgage. The builders are currently paying property taxes based on dirt. Okay, so they may have property taxes around $40,000, right? So, or an assessed value of $40,000. So the county is going to assess the dirt roughly at $40,000. Once the home is done being built and then is sold, the county goes back out to that property, reassesses the value of that house. So a lot of times what happens is if you're not working with a solid lender or a solid loan officer, a lot of people will close the loan on that new home build, but not at the correct property taxes. A lot of people get what's called payment shock on the next year of home ownership because the county goes back out to that house and assesses the property taxes at normal value as if a home was built. So remember, a lot of these people can close based on paying taxes on dirt value. So let's put a hypothetical situation. So say the tax rate in Texas is crazy. Say it's 3%. It's probably more on a new build. But say the tax rate is 3%. So the assessed value on dirt, let's say, is $40,000. So $40,000 assessed value on dirt, 3% tax rate. Someone could be escrowed at $1,200 a year. But you fast forward to the preceding year when the county goes back out to assesses it. Say they assess it at $400,000 instead of $40,000. That person's yearly tax bill goes from $1,200 to $12,000 a year. And if you don't work with, again, if you don't work with the right lender and the right loan officer that understands aggregate adjustment when setting up an escrow account, a lot of people are going to get stuck with a massive tax bill that could be an additional $1,000 on top of their existing mortgage payment, which will create financial hardship. But not only that, let's talk about the surge of interest rates. A lot of these people that are under contract have gone under contract in January, right? And in January, you can argue that rates were 3%. Fast forward to today, rates are about 5.3% according to Freddie Mac. So let's take a comparison on a $400,000 loan. So a $400,000 loan at an interest rate of 3% is a principal and interest payment right? Not taxes, not insurance, not PMI or mortgage insurance or MIP, just principal and interest. So $400,000 at 3% is a payment of $1,686 a month. Now, since the rates are exploding, let's say the rate is now 5.5%. So a $400,000 house at 5.5% is going to have a principal and interest payment of $2,271, which is a difference of $585 on only their principal and interest, not counting property taxes, not counting insurance, but just their principal and interest, which is a 25% increase. So these people that are under contract with new home builders right now, they may start getting buyer's remorse, and there may be a mass exodus of people leaving those contracts because they're already too expensive to begin with. You're at danger of not setting up a proper escrow account. You may get hit with a $10,000 tax bill on your second year of home ownership. There's so many dangers right now from buying a new home build. So we need to see new home builders, if they can, reduce price, offer buyers incentives and things of that nature, because they are at the top of the top of the top of the housing market bubble. And here's another thing, you guys. A lot of times what will happen is, so say someone is under contract, they get qualified to purchase a new home build. If that new home build takes 6 to 8 months to complete, generally what happens in the lending institutions is that buyer will be re-underwrote, a couple weeks before closing. So they're going to be re-underwrote 2-3 weeks before closing on that house. If they re-underwrite and they didn't take into consideration the increased interest rates, increased property taxes, homeowners insurance, and things of that nature, a lot of people are going to be denied at the very last minute and are going to be in a bad situation. So a lot of people go back into underwriting with their loan right before closing, which can be devastating, right? And that will lead to additional surges of cancellations. Now, number 5, will we have price reductions and will this create more inventory? I'm saying absolutely, because sales and construction generally lag behind interest rates from 3 to 6 months. I'm thinking that Q3, and I've said this on many videos, you guys, Q3 of this year, I believe we're going to start seeing new home builders panic. I think Q3 of this year, we're going to start seeing new home builders reduce the prices and also bring back buyers' incentives. So I think that's going to happen 3 to 6 months from today's date on the new home builder side. So you guys, I want to conclude this video with just some overall conclusions that I developed from making this video and analyzing the data. What I'm starting to see right now is a lot of big companies and a lot of people are not and have not been prepared for how quickly the housing market is transitioning, right? So I'm starting to see a lot of these new home builders stuck between a rock and a hard place. And if they don't adjust accordingly to this massively changing housing market and rapidly changing housing market, we're gonna see a massive problem with new home builders. Someone needs to, essentially people need to start paying attention to the data. And here's the other thing. Now, if we do have a housing market crash, I don't think it's going to last as long as 2008, because the housing market bubble during that time took 4 to 6 years to create. And that was developed essentially from bad lending, right? Subprime lending, stated income, things of that nature. But it took a long time. It was a massive bubble created over many years. Fast forward to today, you can argue that this bubble was created in less than 2 years. So although I think that this could potentially be as devastating, possibly more devastating than 2008, depending on the metro area, I also don't think it's gonna last as long, but that also depends on stagflation and political factors. So it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens as we go into Q3 and finish out Q2 of 2022. So keep your eyes on new home builders. If you guys start seeing them come back on the market with price reductions and buyers incentives, it may be time to buy again. Now, personally, as I've told you, I plan on coming back into the market Q4 of this year and into 2023. But if I start seeing deals in Q3, I may just snag a house because I'm desperately searching for a primary residence. As you guys know, I converted my last house into a rental, decided to rent, but I've uplifted my family and children, and I really hate it, you guys. It's a lot of pressure on my shoulders. I want my wife and children to have a nice house again and our own house again. So I may go into Q3, but I'm looking every day, and I think you guys should look every day too. Other than that, guys, I really appreciate you following along with me on this video. If you're out there investing in real estate, I do wish you luck, and I hope you win.